Alright, hello citizens of the Nigelverse. It's Nigel here once again, and because of course it is the month of January, it's Royal Rumble season, and if you haven't been able to tell already, not just from my reviews, but me even starting back in December, kind of talking about it, I love the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is probably my absolute favorite time of year. And the thing is, though, with the Royal Rumble being the start of the road to WrestleMania, you would expect that it would start off the road to WrestleMania in a big way. WrestleMania, the granddaddy of them all, the showcase of the Immortals, the Royal Rumble being the starting point. But that hasn't always been the case. It's not all Rumble winners are created equal. Some, in fact, have been not as good as they could have or should have been. And so it's time to do what all the sci fi time travel movies have told us not to do and alter time, at least a tad bit. So I have with me here, there are 10 10 potential alternate realities. We have 10 rumbles with their actual winners versus who I put down on could have been their winners, and in some cases, in fact, in most of these cases, probably should have been their winners. So a couple things to note before we get into it. For starters, I try to stick as close to the timeline as possible, and what that means is trying to pick people who were in the match, but at least he's with maybe one or two exceptions, and pretty much to keep that to where if they were in the match, then they feasibly could have won it. I did have to make some insertions, one or two insertions, and we'll talk about them when they come up. But the other thing is that while these are mostly my opinions, and if you disagree with any of these, that is completely fine. Some of these may be shared by other people, also even you guys. So, of course, if you do who enjoy what we're doing here, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And everything. Yeah, doing it beforehand. I'll probably do it again at the end, and as usual. But without further ado, let's get right into it. It uh, it's so. Oh, the first Rumble that we're visiting here is the 2014 Royal Rumble. You know the one that pretty much got ruined, and because Daniel Bryan wasn't in it. So at this point, the Yes movement was in full effect, and it wasn't slowing down anytime soon. Daniel Bryan, the fans at the time made it clear Daniel Bryan was going to be in the main event. Daniel Bryan was going to win the WWE and the World Heavyweight Championship. If at this point it was the unified WWE World Heavyweight Championships, and by that I mean they just walked around holding the two belts. Oh, so Daniel Bryan was winning that, and we are not taking no for an answer. And they did not take no for an answer, because once once people figured out Daniel Bryan wasn't in the match, that's when, and literally everybody in the match was forced to turn heel. Even poor Rey Mysterio. Oh, poor Rey, being booed when you shouldn't be. Oh, poor Rey Mysterio. So who actually won it? It was Batista. Batista still got to main event, but who should have won it? Weren't you paying attention to my speech? Daniel Bryan, of course. Hey, they tried so hard to keep Dan Bryan out of the main event. They tried having him join the Wyatt family. They tried having the whole teases of evolution and there or with Dan Bryan, not Dan Bryan, but Batista and Triple H and Randy Orton, and they would do a full on sort of without Ric Flair Evolution reunion and after WrestleMania, and they would of course face the Shield and everything, but they. All right, so sorry for that there, but they tried so hard to keep Daniel Bryan away from the main event scene, but the fans were not having it. If Daniel Bryan was going to be in the main event, Daniel Bryan's winning the championship, and the fans were not taking no for an answer, or no pun intended. With Daniel Bryan's catchphrase, well, one of his two, you know what I mean. But yeah, so Daniel Bryan definitely he should have won this one on poor Batista. Hey, you do although I did just say Daniel Bryan should have won it. Hey, poor Batista, he was definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. He might have even been the wrong gay guy, hey, if you're Hulk Hogan. But nevertheless, next up, we're moving on to 2016. This is the Rumble that Roman Reigns defended the WWE Championship in which was a interesting Rumble to say the least. We got AJ Styles' debut, but the Rumble ended up being won by a returning Triple H, pretty much guaranteeing your WrestleMania 32 main event, and that sure worked out well for them. Triple H ended up winning it. You may be thinking, Nigel, it was a W Championship. It was defended in the Royal Rumble match. There's no way they could have salvaged it. And Triple H was returning. Who else could have won it? I'm glad you asked. That's because the person I would have had win it instead, and maybe it's a long shot, but maybe I'm going somewhere with this for you guys. Is the person I would have had win in the match would be Dean Ambrose. Yeah, Dean Ambrose. Sadly, Dean Ambrose didn't quite get all of his flowers. He got some of his flowers when he was in WWE, but sadly didn't quite get all of them. And this was one of the examples of that. It's like people definitely wanted Dean to finally grab that brass ring. He pretty much was like the guy, no matter what WWE tried to say. This wasn't Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. This wasn't head of the table cool Roman Reigns. This was suffer and succotash son Roman Reigns. But I definitely would have given this one to Dean Ambrose. And probably have him face Roman at WrestleMania instead, and have Dean win from there, and you probably could have Dean feud with Seth and everything. But it probably would have been a much better match than what either guy ended up doing. Of course, Roman had the stinker in the main event with Triple H. At least Dean's stinker with Brock wasn't in the main event though. But yeah, so I would have had Dean Ambrose win the match and the WWE Championship within the match, and maybe tease some dissension, maybe kind of a friendly, somewhat heated rivalry between the former Shield mates and Dean and Roman, but sadly, Roman was getting over, and this time WWE was taking over an answer. And you may be thinking, Nigel, where's the 2015 Rumble? The one that Roman won. The one that people also feel Daniel Bryan should have won. And the only reason I didn't include it here, there's a couple reasons actually. The first being it gave us the Brock match at Mania 31, so there's that going for it at least. But the other thing is sadly with Daniel Bryan also getting injured, similar to what happened when he won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, it would have led to him relinquishing it early. And at least when Seth cashed in, before Seth himself also got injured, he held on to it. It pretty much for the rest of the year up until November, they literally had to injury literally had to yoink the title off of him. But yeah, so that's the only reason, and I didn't put that there. But truth be told, if you want to put Daniel Bryan in that slot as well, I know some people do, who put Daniel Bryan in that slot to where they feel like he should have won the 2015 Rumble. Then yeah, fair enough. Especially because at least he wouldn't have gotten as booed as heavily as Roman did. Yes, that's some of the only reasons why I decided not to include it here. Plus, it'd be kind of too easy, you know. And I want a little bit more of a challenge. That being said, it's time to move on to the 1997 Rumble. Who won? Stone Cold Steve Austin, in quotation marks. The thing is, Stone Cold got eliminated. He got eliminated, but slid back in and eliminated the real winner, as well as who people think should have won the match, that being Bret Hart. Right, people wanted to see Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels do the rematch. They had the match the year before, the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12. They wanted the rematch, didn't quite get the rematch. I think mostly coming down to Shawn Michaels not playing ball, aka being Shawn. But by all intents and purposes, Brett really should have won the match. But Steve did. If anything, it did further a rivalry leading into the submission match at WrestleMania 13. And so there's that at least. He's an iconic, legendary match. It's crazy. Steve Austin won the Rumble, but not only did he not get the W Championship shot, he didn't even get the main event shot. Instead, he put on the classic that outshined the main event, but not the main event itself. But sometimes it's better to have a match that should have been the main event versus a match that actually was the main event. At least in some cases, and that's definitely what Steve Austin had. But the next Rumble we're going to is the 1999 Royal Rumble. And don't worry, Steve will get his vengeance because he should have won this this Rumble match. Who won it though? Vince McMahon. Yeah, this is the match that Vince McMahon won. Like, hey, honestly, it's more of like a really big angle, and there is something admittedly comical about Vince and Austin being numbers 1 and 2, and Austin pretty much chasing Vince out of the arena just for both to show up later and Vince to end up winning it. Obviously due to some corporation chicanery, but otherwise, it does leave the rest of the match kind of flat. Unfortunately, because you figured it probably would have been in one at least of those two guys. I don't think anybody expected Vince McMahon to actually do it, but he did it. He actually did it. You know what? For all the flack we give Shane for booking himself so strongly in the Men's Rumble in 2022, at least he decided not to win the whole thing, like Vince did. But yeah, Vince did not need this win, and we were gonna get Austin versus Rock anyway at WrestleMania 15. You might as well have just did this to build that up from there. But nevertheless, the next we're going to move on to who, speaking of which, is the 2022 Men's Rumble. So, who ended up winning that match? Brock Lesnar. Who should have won the match? Matt Riddle. No, I'm just kidding. But although, could you imagine? So, recently, and the reason I make that joke is because recently Matt Riddle has been saying that he was supposed to win the 2022 Rumble, but Brock shot that down. Whether that's true or not, I guess is up to you to be believed. But could you imagine if Matt Riddle had indeed won the Rumble and literally everything else stayed the same? Meaning Matt Riddle won the WWE Championship in the Elimination Chamber, and then went on to fight Roman in the biggest WrestleMania match of all time, to unify the championships. Could you imagine all of that, but instead being Matt Riddle, or Matt Riddle facing Roman instead at SummerSlam, and possibly coming down with either a tractor or another large vehicle, like all the stuff that Brock got, but instead it being Matt Riddle. But nope. Instead, Brock Lesnar won the match. But who do I think should have won it? Honestly, I would have went, and this is the pick I put in for it. I would have went with Big E. Poor Big E. Like 2022 ended up being very rough for him. Not just because of him losing the WWE Championship, but then his subsequent neck injury. But man, could you imagine if Big E had won the opportunity and hopefully not have gotten injured, but instead went on to face Roman at WrestleMania? Even if you still did want to do the title unification, Big E winning back the WWE Championship and then going on to face Roman in title versus title, or perhaps even get at a potential New Day versus Bloodline type of match at Mania, maybe for unification of all the titles, because I don't think the titles were, the tag titles at least, were quite unified yet. And I don't think those, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think those got unified until SummerSlam. I could be totally wrong about that, but could you imagine? But yeah, I definitely would have had to go to Big E. He, of course, was hoping Big E is recovering nicely, even if he doesn't return to the ring. Just hoping he's still able to do things well in his day to day after the injury. But yeah, heck, could you imagine if Big E had indeed won the Rumble and then went on to battle went on to battle Roman at Mania or get the WWE Championship back. Now in hindsight, I maybe not unify the titles because then you have a situation where Roman was walking around with the one championship, so that they had to introduce another world championship, which, despite Seth's best efforts, is still seen by some as kind of that consolation prize. But but yeah, could you imagine? And now there's videos coming out about the definite butterfly effect from the day one event, and it's definitely interesting to think about in hindsight, and seeing how the course of history had evolved since that fateful day in 2022, that being January 1st, of course. But next up is the 2012 Royal Rumble, and it's funny because the person who I put in that should/could have won, and that's literally what I have written in my notes, is should/could have won. The person who I have written there actually was supposed to win it. So the person who ended up winning the Rumble was Sheamus. But the person who could/should/was supposed to win the 2012 Royal Rumble, if you can believe it, was Chris Jericho. Now, granted, of course, we're not talking about what's going on with Chris Jericho currently. That's that's mostly unrelated. That's we're keeping that the professional realm of Chris Jericho as the wrestler/the on-screen TV personality, not Chris Jericho the person in the situation that he's in right now in the present day. But anyway, I digress. So, Chris Jericho apparently was supposed to win the Royal Rumble. He had just returned, gotten this huge wave of momentum upon his return, and apparently was definitely supposed to win the 2012 Royal Rumble, but apparently it was changed at the last minute for being too predictable. Wow, the one time, and that W switches something up for it being too predictable. Well, can you imagine how much other stuff we could have avoided for being too predictable if WWE had come to their senses sooner? But man, they picked the wrong time to come to their senses about something being too predictable. And you know what? Sometimes things are predictable because they make sense and because they feel right. And Sheamus winning over Jericho, a lot more people would have wanted to see Jericho win. He was going to face CM Punk for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 28 anyway. You might as well have let him win it and let him win the Rumble. But nope, instead it went to Sheamus. And then Sheamus' reward for that is the 18-second squash to Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 28. Which did spark the yes movement, and now that I think about it, so maybe you may or may not want to omit this one from the list. I don't know, but nevertheless, there's another big butterfly effect. Would the yes movement have happened or happened as strongly without this match? Thoughts. But next up is 2017, and who won this match? Randy Orton, and he went on to face Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 33 in a very interesting match. It was great. But yeah. So but who should have won? Chris Jericho again. Yeah. This was the year that Chris Jericho was gonna fight Kevin Owens. And so they had the Chris Jericho Kevin Owens team up, aka one of the best things going on Monday Night Raw. And man, 2016 and 2017 was kind of rough times for Monday Night Raw, and 2018 to an extent, and 2019. And 2020 even. Man, Raw has had some rough times. That's kind of the gist of that. Is Raw's had some rough times, but Jericho and Kevin Owens, their friendship, their rivalry was one of the best things going, and it got squandered for Goldberg for a Goldberg Universal Championship run. He at least redeemed himself against Brock at WrestleMania 33, but that really didn't need a championship. And then Brock went to the Phantom Zone pretty much as champion after that. And meanwhile, Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho fought in a good match for the U.S. Championship. A match that apparently Vince McMahon didn't like. Like, instead, he had Vince literally apparently said that it was the worst thing he'd ever seen at WrestleMania. WrestleMania, the same show that just a few years earlier gave us Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler, or the same show that gave us Triple H and Booker T. Yet that one was the worst you've seen. Sure, or sure, Vince, sure, or unless we forget, I'm going off on a tangent, but nevertheless, that's yeah. But a lot of people feel like this should have been for the world title, and it definitely could have sparked the dissension between the two. And in hindsight, like they try to explain it away that Kevin Owens turned on Chris Jericho because as Owens Jericho got Owens the match against Goldberg, but also it's because it's Kevin Owens. And Owens does turn on a lot of people, but nevertheless, this feud definitely should have been for the title, and Jericho winning the Rumble definitely could have kickstarted that. But the next one that we have is the 2020 Women's Rumble. Who won it? Charlotte Flair. Or why? Because it's Charlotte Flair. Look, nothing against Charlotte Flair, which of course, wishing her a speedy recovery as well, recovering from her knee surgery. But nothing against Charlotte Flair. She's very talented, and she can definitely go in the ring. The promos are kind of and she does better promos as a heel, but nevertheless, as Charlotte can go in the ring. She's talented. It but one of the main problems that a lot of people had with her is that she often got booked too strong for her own good, and I think this was an example of it. Why did she win this match? Because of Charlotte Flair. Why did she challenge for the NXT Women's Championship? Because of Charlotte Flair. Why did she win the NXT Women's Championship? Because of Charlotte Flair, and because they thought it would boost ratings, but also because of Charlotte Flair. Or Charlotte Flair didn't need any of that. It's Charlotte Flair. She was a made woman at this point. She didn't need the NXT Women's Championship. If anything, it gave a little bit of exposure to Rhea Ripley and Io Sky, aka Io Shirai at the time. Who would eventually win it off of Charlotte Flair, but otherwise she didn't. Otherwise, Charlotte didn't really need the win. You know who definitely could have used the win and then went on to who could have also used the win at WrestleMania? Shayna Baszler. This is the year Shayna Baszler fought Becky Lynch and for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania and ended up losing. And especially in hindsight, knowing what we know now about Becky at the time being pregnant and everything, Becky taking up. I don't know if she learned about her pregnancy at the time, but Shayna Baszler taking it off of Becky Lynch, I think would have been a good move. How has Shayna Baszler not won on Women's Championship gold on the main roster yet? It's criminal, honestly. But at least Women's World Championship gold. Well, she's been tag team champion, but that's about it. But how on earth has Shayna Baszler not been Women's World Champion? Not won either of the Women's World Championships, whether it be Raw or SmackDown or now Women's Championship, Women's World Championship, what have you. But how has Shayna Baszler not won them? Her winning and then going on to face and defeat Becky Lynch, and I think would have been nice, and it would have spared us Shayna Baszler using the Elimination Chamber as kind of a squash match. They essentially wasted an Elimination Chamber to not only build up Shayna Baszler, but then subsequently have her lose at WrestleMania. Why? Just why? But we're not quite done with the women yet, because next up is the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble. Who ended up winning? A returning rowdy Ronda Rousey. Try saying that 5 times fast. So Ronda Rousey came back and ended up winning. It was kind of predictable. And who could have / should have won? I literally have my notes. Literally anybody else. But if I did have to pick one, I probably would have went with Bianca Belair, at least to get her back to facing Becky Lynch, which she would end up doing and winning anyway. Ronda Rousey. The thing is, I don't hate Ronda Rousey, but if you want Ronda Rousey to challenge for the women's championship, you didn't necessarily need to have her win the Royal Rumble to do so. Oh, she could have. It's Ronda Rousey. She probably could have just asked for it and got it. She's kind of at that low level. Some people feel like she shouldn't be at that level, but for the most part, she is. So you didn't really need to have her win the Rumble in that regard if you wanted to get her to that point. But she did. She did. She ended up winning the Royal Rumble is that year. But honestly, I think Bianca Belair would have been a better choice just to get her back to Becky Lynch and everything after what went down at SummerSlam the previous year, where she got squashed by Becky Lynch. Why did she get squashed by Becky Lynch? The world may never know. But last but certainly not least, we have the 1994 Royal Rumble. Who won this one? Bret Hart and Lex Luger when they both went out at the same time. But who should have won it? Bret Hart by himself. This was of course, or you do have to keep in mind like the context of when this is taking place. So this was right after the steroid scandal and everything. And so they wanted another buff like American-made hero. Now that Hulk Hogan was gone, I believe Hogan was like gone and everything for WCW by this point. So they wanted someone to fill that void. And someone who could pass a drug test, and I guess Lex Luger was up. But a lot of people were high on Bret Hart at this point. Bret Hart definitely was emerging like the top face of the company. He not just on screen with the fans, but even in the locker room, a lot of people were vying for Bret Hart. Right, this was pretty much like them figuring out who was going to be the bigger star of the two. And it ended up going to Bret Hart anyway. So he might as well just had Bret Hart win outright. Here in the Royal Rumble. But nevertheless, we did get the double win and the double elimination. And not the last time WWE would do that, although the second time was allegedly on accident. Learn more about that in my review of the Royal Rumble the Royal Rumble match from 2005. If you haven't already, go check that out. But nevertheless, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on post notifications so you know every time I upload a video so you can see as soon as it drops. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the video and which Royal Rumble winner would you have changed, whether it be from any of the Rumbles I mentioned in this list, or perhaps a different one, and perhaps a different Rumble that I didn't include here that you would have said, someone else should have won that Rumble in hindsight. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.